Hi, I'm Julie with Pettyjohn Quilting and Embroidery. For all you long arm quilters, I thought I would talk to you a little bit about the quilt that I'm working on. This is a cute quilt. My first inclination is to load a quilt the exact way that it's supposed to go, like on a bed or how it will be used as a throw quilt. This is king size and it is longer vertically. So one of these ends will be the top, not the way I've got it loaded. Now, it's a pretty simple thing to think we can load a quilt vertically or horizontally. Either way is fine. So I don't give you this tip to sound insulting to you as a long arm quilter. We all know that we can do it that way, but do we think of it? You know, I don't. My first inclination is load it the way it's meant to be by the customer. What is the customer's top? I'm going to put that on first. Well, this quilt, I just thought it would be a good reminder to you to always think, which way do I want to load this quilt? Because when I first looked at it, I thought, okay, I need to load it with the top up at the front of my frame. But then I started thinking about putting in different designs in each section. And what that would mean if I was quilting it that way on my frame is that I would quilt down as far as I could in the throat space, and then I would have to stop. And then I would have to do each one and then advance the quilt and then start again this way. And then I thought, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, of course I can load it horizontally, and won't that make it such an easier job on me? So just think about that for a minute. If I'm doing everything by rows, it is going to be, and it has started out that way, to be a much easier job to do one long continuous stitch line instead of having to chunk my way down the quilt. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention, just to remind everybody. Consider loading your quilt in both directions and think about which one's going to be the easiest. Now I want you to look at this quilt, and you can see that I wanted to put one design in the border, one design in each striped row, and then a different design in these rows that are called stacked bricks. And each row alternates directions. So this row is going this direction, this row is going this direction, and it continues that all the way. At first I thought, oh, this is going to be an easy one, but then it really wasn't that easy, because when I would think about doing lines, like there are some piano key slanted lines, but I wasn't sure how they were going to play out. And if the lines were not right on the line, in the center on the line, in the center on the line, in the center on the line, you know, really showing a good pattern that way, then it could make the quilt look wonky, or could make it look like I made mistakes in the quilting or something like that. So I didn't want to do anything that would make the eye see the lines and think, ooh, that's not quite right. The first thing I thought about was using a chevron pattern, and that's not anything I could have turned this way or that way. But I thought, well, it would have a lot of lines that went in one direction and another, one direction and another, and that could have been something to consider. I found another design. This is Carly Porter's brick design. I may not be saying that design exactly as she has it. In editing, I'll go back and I'll put the exact name on that. But I thought this was interesting because it has a slanted design to it. But it's not like the slanted piano keys in that just this up, down, up, down, up, down movement. I don't think that it's going to matter so much how it falls, where it falls on the quilt as lines would. And I can reverse it. I can go up to modify and I can rotate this. And so if I hit mirror, look, it's going the other direction. So on one row, I'll have it going this way, and on the other rows, I'll have it going this way. So I think that's really going to work out well. I want to show you how on ProStitcher I'm going to mark out my area and make sure I fit this in here perfectly. The very first thing you should notice about this design is that I'm going to have some space. Once I get my area in here as a rectangle, I'm going to have some space here where I don't have any quilting. And then I'm going to have space over at this end where I would have no quilting. So what I want to do instead is to have my area box fall within the design and then crop it. And that way I'll fill it in much better. When I come over here to the far left side of this row, I'm going to want to mark all of my area. And I want it to be exact right above this stitch in the ditch. Now, see where the laser light is? That tells me where my needle is going to go down. If I place it right at the seam, I run the risk of this going up over into the red or the black area of my stripe line. And I have white thread, and I don't want that to happen. So I would much rather err a little bit to the side of where I have this white fabric. So I'll have white thread on white fabric. Plus, I found that when we're making our marks, it really works best if the laser light is just to the side of the flat part of the fabric. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to place my laser light there, and I'm going to mark my first mark of my area box. I'm going to, up above on this menu, I'm going to choose area, and that turns on my area so that I can make multi-point marks to create an area box. Now, I have an Amara, so I have shortcut keys on the handlebars. See where a 2-corner shows a star and a multi-point shows a diamond. Well, on my left handlebar, I have a star, and on my right handlebar, I have a diamond. So now I can push that, and that's a shortcut. I don't have to push my ProStitcher screen up here every time. I can just push the handlebar button. So let's start marking this thing. You always hear a little ding whenever it's marking. Now I'm going to want to make several of these. The reason why I would not want to make one mark at one end and then go all the way over to the far end of this long quilt, which this quilt is, I think, about 108. And the reason I don't want to go all the way over is because when we load a quilt, we don't always have it just perfectly straight. And if I make one mark at one end and one mark way at the other end of the quilt, it will make a perfectly straight line from that one dot to the last dot. I know that it's not going to be that perfectly straight, so I have to make a whole bunch of these because my area box will create a straight line from one mark to the next. So I need my distance between my marking spots to be very short. I'll meet you at the other end. Okay, I've already been all the way to the far end, and now here I am back along the top of this left side, and now down to where we started. So looking at our screen here in the pink is the area box. Okay, I want this to be centered in here. So I'm going to go to modify, and then I'm going to align my design. And I can align it in the center, that means both directions, or I can choose what I want on the horizontal and what I want on the vertical. I'm going to just choose center. Now put that inside my area box. And see how I have some left over on the left and some on the right? That's what I wanted. So I can now crop. So I'm going to go up here. I'm still under modify, and I'm going to crop. And I want the edges closed off. I don't want a bunch of start and stop points jumping. So I'm going to do edges, and I want to crop off everything that's on the outside of that box. So there we go. Look at that. That's going to be much better than having a bunch of not stitched areas. Now, anytime we get done doing a lot of things to our design, we want to baseline. I want to make sure, though, that this is really, really fitting in that area box. Because, I mean, it looks really, really straight, really in good shape, but I'm not real certain about that because I haven't zoomed in real well. So, I'm going to skew it. I'm going to hit the skew, and then for some reason in this version, it's the latest version of Handy Quilter's ProStitcher, the skew button is not working at all. For me, it hasn't since I upgraded. I have to use border skew. This is a border, but I have to use border skew for everything. So I'm going to hit border skew, and it did just bump it just a little bit. I'm not so sure that this is the right density. Should I have made the lines farther apart? Should I have made them closer together? I'm pretty sure not, but possibly farther apart. So one way to check that, when you get ready to quilt, you always go up to the button that says ProStitcher, and it's on quilt, and we push run, and we start. That's how we start stitching. Now, if, though, I want to check it first, rather than have a bunch of lines stitch out and then have to pick them out because they don't look right to me. Over here at the side, I can turn all these off. This is my stitch light, and this is that I want the start. I want it to pull up automatically. I want it to put a tie on the start, but I go up and down several times, and I want it to end that way too. But if I don't want any of this, I'm gonna push that button, and it takes all of that off. What that does is have the machine run through everything without really putting thread in. So I'm going to do that next, and I'm going to watch it and see if it looks okay to me. So let's do that. Okay, I'm getting ready. I've got my thread. I'm holding on to it here, but it's not going to thread. I'm going to push my run button, and the machine moves to where the start is. And it's going to show us where it would be stitching. If I had the stitch light on, actual thread would be going down here. Let's do a real stitch this time. Go to ProStitcher, Quilt. My auto pull-up is on, so I grab the bobbin and the top thread, hit resume. It will do my beginning tie-off stitches. I think that's what I'm looking for. It's going to have this angle going in the same direction as the fabric. I hope you picked up a few tips here. Join me again next time.